Okay, let's talk about the Eastern Suburbs Roosters. I mean, they're one of Rugby League's original foundation clubs, all the way back from 1908. And they're one of its most successful, with a staggering 15 premierships to their name. For decades, they were just known as the Tricolors. But today, well, today they're defined by one of the most iconic emblems in all of sports.
So that's the big question, right? How did one of Sydney's oldest teams, a club just soaked in local history, end up with an identity that was so clearly inspired by France? It's a fantastic story, and it's all about practicality, local pride, and a revolution that was born from hitting rock bottom.
So the club started out life as the Tricolors, a name that came straight from their classic striped jersey. Pretty simple. But today, they're defined by that proud rooster. In this explainer, we're going to connect the dots between these two eras and uncover the three key stories that forged this famous identity. Okay, let's dive into this. Our first clue takes us clear across the globe to France in the early 1950s. You know, this whole thing didn't start with some grand vision. It actually started with a really practical problem that needed a creative, and in this case, international, solution. Believe it or not, the problem was laundry. Yep, after a long season of washing, especially in a really wet year like 1950, those red, white, and blue stripes on the old jerseys would just fade and blur together. On the field, in the middle of a fast-paced game, it got really hard to tell who was who. Something had to change. And the best part is, we know exactly where this idea came from, thanks to the players themselves. East Nationals, Ferris Ashton, and Cole Donahue were over in France touring with the Kangaroos in '52. They saw the French team's jersey, that V design, and realized it was the perfect solution. So they brought the idea back home to the club committee, and just like that, the change was made.
But here's the thing. It wasn't just about the jersey design. They were also really inspired by the French team's powerful nickname, Le Coq Chantant, which basically means the crowing rooster. It was this symbol of a fierce, proud competitor that just rules its domain. A pretty perfect mascot for a rugby league team, right?
All right, so that's our first clue. Let's move on to the second piece of the puzzle. Because, you know, an idea from France is one thing, but for it to really stick, it had to connect with the club's local identity back in Sydney. And as it turned out, it was a perfect fit. And this is where it gets really cool. The rooster just clicked. Think about it. The team is from the Eastern Suburbs, which is where the sun rises first over Sydney. Roosters crow at dawn. In fact, the club's old supporters were nicknamed the Sunrises, and a popular sports magazine back then often called them Easts from where the sun rises. It was this totally natural, almost poetic connection.
Okay, so we've got the idea from France, and we've got this perfect local connection. But our third clue, well, it reveals a quirky, lesser-known story about how a clever sponsorship deal really helped cement the Roosters' name in the club's culture, long before it was ever official.
So, back in 1967, a company called Ingram Enterprises, which was run by a couple of well-known sportsmen, kind of took the club under its wing. They offered up a series of prizes that would make the Rooster moniker a very, very real part of every single game week. Now, the main prize was pretty significant for the time, a nice trophy and $400 cash for the best player of the whole season. A great incentive for sure, but it wasn't the prize everyone was talking about. No, the real kicker was the weekly prize. Each week, the best players from the club's first, second, and third grade teams would receive a dozen actual roosters. You can just imagine how quickly the name Roosters became a real, tangible part of the club's identity after that. So when you put it all together, you see it wasn't just one thing that created the identity, right? It was this unique combination of three totally different stories: a practical idea from France, a deep-rooted connection to the local sunrise, and a seriously quirky sponsor's prize that made the name impossible to forget. But the story doesn't end there, because the Rooster was about to become way more than just a nickname or a prize. We now come to the climax of the story, where the club was at its absolute lowest point, and the rooster was transformed into an official symbol of revolution.
This is where it all comes to a head. It's 1966, and the club endures its worst season ever. They failed to win a single game. It was a humiliating low. So, in response, just before Christmas that year, the board made a huge move. They officially adopted the rooster as the club's emblem. With a new coach, the legendary Jack Gibson, coming on board, that proud rooster appeared on the jersey for the very first time in 1968. And the effect? It was absolutely immediate and, honestly, pretty astonishing. Under the banner of that new rooster emblem and their new coach, the club went from 0 wins in 1966
to making the finals for the first time in 7 years in 1967. I mean, that's one of the most dramatic turnarounds in the sport's entire history. So you see, the rooster wasn't just a mascot anymore. It became something so much bigger. It was a public declaration of intent. It was a symbol of a club that was refusing to accept failure and was ready to fight its way back. It was a symbol of a complete and total rebirth. Which leaves us with this final thought, right? Can a symbol, an emblem, really change a team's destiny? The story of how the Roosters found their feathers, a story born in France, grounded in Sydney's sunrise, and forged in the fire of a winless season, well, it suggests that sometimes a powerful symbol is the first crow of a brand new dawn.